100 cases of people who wandered into the wilderness but never came back. Accounts of children, people
was a coyote,
vanishing,
dog, or
seemingly
else.
swallowed up by the many endless forests across America, or even later found in ways that defy logic.
An animal.
Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man.
She described the way that the creature moved as being unnatural.
You've had problems in the neighborhood
It looked
before?
like it was
Yeah, my dog was
uncomfortable
killed here
in
just
its own
recently.
feet.
I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, it was standing out there. I'm out here
It
looking through
looked
the
like
window
a
now.
vehicle. She
I don't want to go
believed
outside.
that what she was looking at
Jesus
was
Christ,
pure
you better.
evil.
Sure. See ya.
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9" up.
Do you
Studied
see
the
him now,
cases of
sir?
about
Yes, I'm looking
100
right
people,
at him.
at least, who claim that they've been abducted
hang
by
on.
aliens.
He's
One
right.
of Dr.
Is
Matt's
he in your
patients,
yard,
Linda,
sir?
Yeah,
who
he's
says
gone.
she
He's
has
big.
been
Faded out.
abducted since childhood.
Reality is, I was just
what I remember
being brought up this tunnel of light, right?
being
Out
around my
of
bed.
this tunnel, I
And I
just
ran between them
noticed
and ran
parts
out
of my
of the
life
room
that
to
wouldn't
my
even
mother's
occur to me to
to
remember.
hide
Then I
from
knew that I
And
wasn't
I
being
never
revoked,
told anybody
that I
about
was
that, and I just buried
closed
it.
in. And so then I came to the end of this tunnel and noticed there was a man that first
I
touched me
noticed
at first as
a
a place
mist or a fog
and I
kind
also
of
saw
moving.
relatives that had
The
died
action, the
that
motion
year.
caught my eye.
Then
It
the
actually
wizard,
started
without
taking
moving his
shape,
mouth,
taking
spoke to me and
form.
said,
The
"Struggle,
idea
you're
of the
too
Grim
young to
Reaper
die."
went through my head, cloaked figure. And as I was watching, it kept becoming more and more and more distinct to me that this was actually something with some type of presence. Like it knew I was there. And as I was watching it, it turned and looked directly at me. I felt like whatever this was angry at me. I wasn't welcome. It wanted me out. I had been face to face with a ghost or a demon, a spirit. I'm not really sure what. But this feeling of terror actually was going through me. And I really felt more that it was demonic. It was something very evil.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Real Supernatural Encounters. For my guest today, I have back Maria, and she's going to tell a few more of her personal stories. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and have Maria give a brief bio about herself.
Well, I'm currently 44. I have 5 children. I live in Denmark, Scandinavia. I consider myself what you would term a light worker, and because I was born with full abilities of several kinds, and as such, I have of course had encounters of many varieties my entire life. Besides that, I work with caretaking, so I'm also a lot around people in general. As an empath, I sometimes do what I call I read people. That is me looking into their energies and in general, and into their personality and their history and whatever there is. I think that is a very short version.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maria was on episode 39 recently, and she was telling about her near-death experience. Though she was rushed and had to, unfortunately, we had stopped the episode. I'm still going to ask the same questions for her near-death experiences that she told that episode. But this episode, she's actually going to touch on a few of her darker subjects and stories that you guys will probably find very, very interesting. So without further ado, Maria, if you're ready, go ahead and start with your first encounter experience.
Okay. Well, shadow people seem to me to be like a specific kind of entity, but exactly to their origin, I'm not really sure, but it doesn't seem to me like they have any kind of physical manifestation, like a physical body of any kind at the moment. It seems more to me like they are stuck in some kind of dark dimension that feels absent of light, like divine light particles, however you want to term that. and then it feels without spirit, without emotions, and it feels very cold and kind of like stagnate at the complete standstill of energies where they're at. And from time to time, they need to have some kind of access point to get to Earth, to get into people's home or lives somehow. They cannot just come here. They need to have some kind of access way. If they do have an access way, they can show up literally everywhere. They seem to always be traveling by people, or what I call in between spaces. I have encountered those on and off my entire life. I can even remember seeing them as a baby. I think already like 5-6 months old. I regularly had these very dense, dark, completely black figures, but they looked like black ink blobs, but still they were like, if you have a black ink blob and then you take that and kind of like shape it into something that looks like a human with head and 2 arms and 2 legs and all of that, kind of looks like that. And usually they are a bit bigger than regular humans, but then again, they're not like giant, but they're perhaps like, if you were to meet a human guy that was by nature just really big, that would be kind of like their average size, I guess. Their access point when I was a baby, that was my biological dad. Unfortunately, he was dealing a lot with the dark side. They had a pretty good grip on him. He has what I would call hidden possession, and they could use that as an access point to literally just walk in and out of our home. And what they did when they came in, I was standing like, what I mostly remember is standing in my crib, being able to stand, but I still needed to hold on to something, to hold on to the bars. And I had this special kind of protection that I would probably term angels, because looks like some, not the classical description, they were particular. They were kind of, they felt like they were guards. So I didn't feel any fear, because I knew I already always had those angel kind of figures protecting me. It's like I could feel them shielding me. So I knew that whatever I was seeing outside of my space, that couldn't hurt me or touch me in any way. But I saw them just like crawling across the ceilings and crawling down the walls, and in and out of closets, and just moving around in the apartment, just crossing the rooms. They usually prefer, when they move about in the physical, it seems like they prefer to try and go by what I would call natural shadows. Like if you have the lamp or a sunlight coming onto some kind of object, it casts a natural shadow, and then they usually move from one natural shadow to another, it seems. And I think that's why many people are sometimes in doubt if they actually saw something or if it was just a natural shadow, because that's how they move. And I remember just seeing them there as a baby, just walking in and out, and the vibe to it was very negative. I would say, I would call it a violent negative. What they seem to be affecting people with is that kind of particular vibe. It makes people, it makes humans aggressive and prone to violence that makes no sense. And I even remember seeing them, what I saw, like walking up at my father's back. If his back was here and his face was like turning this way, it would kind of like walk up like that and literally just jump onto him. That's what it looked like. Like it jumped onto him, and then it kind of put its hands like around his head in here, and like it looked like it was literally putting its fingers and hands into him, and grabbing onto him like that on his entire back and his neck and here, and that always ended up with my dad going very aggressive and just starting to throw stuff around and yell and scream at people, and the whole shebang. You know, he was crazy in those moments. He really was. And but what could you do, you know, that age? I didn't even, I think maybe I could say mom, but that was about it. You know, I couldn't like, oh, it's there or anything. I couldn't do a dilly squat. So I just had to watch the whole shebang and watch how my dad just got crazy from this shadow person just being on him. And it looked like it was completely controlling him and just putting all of that aggressive and violent energy into him, and he just started to hurt everyone and everything. And that was usually it started with one coming in, and then it just kind of took off from there. At times I think we had as much as 4 or 5 of them at the same time. They couldn't touch my mom and my older brother and me. They couldn't touch us personally, but of course we were affected by my dad just going crazy and getting violent. And at the age of 4.5, I finally got big enough and strong enough to fight it. I don't know if you want that story too, but
Sure.
it's a bit grim because you could say about me, I also have a human part, but I'm a mixed breed of different alien species. And one of the strongest one in me, the one that I have most in my experience, is the dragon, or draconian, as some refers to it. And age 4.5, that was the first time when my dragon part of me kind of like really, I allowed it to take over. It's different from possession, because possession is unallowed. But if you have by nature have these how can you say, you have those spirits with you as well. It's like you're working together. It's like it's a companionship, and it's an allowed thing. So subconsciously I was allowing it to come forth in me to become much stronger. And I was strong enough at that age to let it come forth. And it was very much needed, because that time the possession in my dad just grew very intense. And again, he was just smashing furniture and beating my mom, and then she was crying in the kitchen. I remember I stood in the hallway, and next thing he was going for my older brother being cornered up, and he was kind of like still trying to protect himself, but I could just tell, he couple of seconds, he's going to get it too. And this kind of allowance and alignment with the dragon part of me that just happened like in a few instants. And me just being about 4.5, I just remember thinking, this is enough. This stops right now. And I just picked up the very first toy I could find. It was like a beach racket that you would use for playing beach tennis. So it was like massive hard plastic. It was pretty hard. And I just remember that, this just gotta stop, and it's now. And that arising of a power so strong, I haven't felt that before. It was really super strong, and it was just decided to, save them, and I just remember my dad was kind of in front of me a little to the left, and he was like siding me, so he wasn't really aware of me being in the doorway. And I just remember expressing like what you would say, like a huge roar of some kind, like really, I just came from the depth of me. And I had this plastic racket, right? So I'm literally just jumping my dad from behind, and he wasn't aware because he was under complete control. And so I just started to beat him with this racket, and right on the spot where the control from the entity was worst. Mm-hmm. And I just kept on beating him, and just was roaring and like stop and roaring, just how can you do that? And at age 4.5, right? It is, but it did, and I just kept on going, and it was so powerful that the entity it couldn't control my dad out of that, so he just started going down to his knees, and I just kept on. I don't think I was necessarily hitting him that hard in the physical, but the power coming out from me, the power of that light was intense. I think it is most likely that's why he started to lose power. The entity started to lose power. And for the first time, my mom spotted this. And I think she kind of realized that, my child is actually protecting us. She's actually, and she's succeeding. And anyway, she grabbed the opportunity, and this time she actually called the police. And I remember four police officers coming out. And one of them was staying with my mom and my big brother in the kitchen. And the 3 others was taking me off my dad and making me stop, because that's how much power I was pulling in those moments. And now I never hurt the officers. You see, the dragon and all of that power, it comes from a place of purity, so there's no evil to it. So of course I didn't hurt the police officers, but I kept going until I was sure that this is done. So they had to pull me off of him from behind, like pulling me like that and holding my arms and my legs back, and keep repeating to me, it's okay, we're taking over now, we're taking him, it's okay, we're taking him now. And when I started to hear them say that, I can remember just calming down started to like, okay, it's okay, I can rest now.
Mhm.
And then it all just calmed down in me. And so all four of him, all four police officers ended up putting both handcuffs and foot shackles of some kind onto him, because the entity was still going so strong in him.
Mhm.
So they were taking no chances. So they cuffed him both hands and legs, and made sure that they were kind of like physically like taking him, pushing him out into the car and locking him in the back so that he couldn't get to them as they were driving either. I remember seeing that out of the window. And they drove off, and after that it was several years before I saw my biological dad again. And that's just a story of how bad it can become with the shadow people. I read somewhere that people are telling about encounters like, oh yeah, but they just came looking and nothing really happened and it just took off again and that. And I just have to say, in my opinion, they're completely underestimating these entities. They really are, because I've seen firsthand what they can do.
Mhm.
And since that, it has been on and off. I usually, if I see any shadow people, it's when I go out, because as the year went by, I think maybe subconsciously, I'm not really sure, but I think I kind of, because of what happened when I was that small, I kind of figured out how to keep them from me. So usually they didn't come looking for me in my room as a child or as I grew older. But if I went out, I did see them from time to time, going by the natural shadows, getting from one point to another, like kind of lurking, going around in the streets. And it seemed to me like they were kind of sensing if there was any people around that they could have, that had that kind of access that they would need in order to start making trouble, you could call it, perhaps. And so they could follow these people home and start to influence them. I have seen those many times, and they can be so dense in their appearance that if they are crossing like street lamps, for instance, because they can't really get around them at some streets, they kind of have to cross some street lights, some street lamps on the street, and you can just see that huge like black person figure just just like walking over the street, trying to quickly find another natural shadow to mix into. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that. It's countless. Then by the years of, I would say, 2017 to 20, something has been changing, and I figured out later what was changing, but I didn't know at first at that time. That was in the same year that I had that vicious vampire attack that almost killed me. After that, I really started having issues with shadow people just walking in and out of my home like it was a freaking train station, and it got worse and worse. And just about 1.5 years ago, my oldest daughter moved back in with me, and she's here every day now. And she has abilities too, but I don't even think you would need abilities to see that in those 3 years, because it was that intense.
Okay.
They were just everywhere, and she saw them and noticed them as well. Now it was like that they couldn't really get too close to us for some reason. Like they couldn't really like attack us personally or anything like that. But I've had so many technical stuff, like a one and all printer that just broke down because a shadow person walked straight through the area where it was placed. And after that, the printer just stopped working. I just couldn't get it going, whatever I did. My fridge and my laundry machine is damaged because of them using it as in-between spaces to get into my home. They still work, my fridge and my laundry, but they're damaged, so they would soon need replacement. I could literally hear them going through, particularly the fridge. That was bad. It was really bad with the fridge. It was rumbling, it was knocking, it was, all kind of sounds that a fridge, even if it's not functioning properly, should not be saying. Sometimes, and it was 24/7, both day and night, because it got that intense over the years. And sometimes you could literally hear it sounded completely like something was kind of coming from the top of the fridge and just going in like boom, and then like scrumpling around inside the fridge, almost like it was crawling around in between the shelves or something. Like really someone was like trying to crawl around in there. And then a weird kind of like thump again when it came out the door. Even the door to the fridge being closed, it could, like, it seems, work its way through that in between space, and then going through that field of energy, I guess, and like a thump into the kitchen. And then we would have the kitchen lights flickering, stuff falling off the counter, for instance, and then footsteps through the apartment. And of course the classical, I think I saw a shadow in my peripheral vision. Yeah, we absolutely did. And they were just everywhere. I had a large mirror at a point of time that was abused as well. Long story short, I ended up throwing that mirror out, because no matter how much I tried to close it off as a portal, it just didn't work. I ended up turning the mirror with the reflection side up against a wall. Even with this, you could, in the middle of the night, there's all of this 3 a.m. kind of show that just, that's just a nice time, right? Sometimes I was awakened by the sound of some kind of like, almost like if you have strands of glitter and you some kind make it a soft rattling kind of sound, and then the next like slam, and it slammed into the wall, so you could hear like it's something slamming into the wall. And of course, then when I got up and like, what the frick was that? And looking around, and I could tell that it was coming from the place of the mirror. Nothing there, right? At some point of time, it happened during the day, this slamming through into the wall through the mirror. And it was such a powerful slam that I could see the frame of the mirror just slightly vibrating. So so that's taking some pressure. And there was a particular part of my apartment that they seemed to like to try and come in, besides the fridge and the mirror. If you go by feng shui, it's a part of my apartment that points to the west, and that is west is also like symbolized with water, and water is spirit. So it kind of makes sense in some kind of way that that was their favorite spot. And you know, sometimes again with the slamming, there was one day, and my oldest daughter Sif, she was witnessing this. She was at the dining table right besides this corner of my apartment, and I was walking into the living room. And as I did, what I can best describe as it sounded like the sound of a huge truck literally driving into that corner of my apartment. It was that loud, and we were both like, whoa, like we really had a jump scare, because it was that physical. Like, can you imagine like a truck driving into a wall with a window, and the window again, it was like slightly vibrating. You could just see that on the window. But this time we were two people, like it gets to a point when it becomes an instinct. When something like this happens, we kind of naturally like put up a shield. That's how it feels to us, like we're shielding. So we didn't see anything come in, but we could hear from outside of our home, like something I can best describe as a big man of some kind, just yelling and shouting from just the other side of the window. I can't remember if he was shouting something in particular. I just remember that hardcore intense feeling of this thing, most likely a shadow people, but I didn't see him per se. But I saw him kind of like with my inner vision, and it was the same kind of shape, the same kind of figure. And the intent was just that you know, let me in, I want to come in, let me in, like that. Just, you know, and we were just looking at this window vibrating, and just like, and my daughter was like, oh my God, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, did you hear that? I mean, whoa. So yeah, I don't even, there's we just had so much of that, so much. It was so intense. From 17 to 20, it was so intense. It was just more and more and more, and then first at night, and then it spread into the day, and it just kept going. And my fridge was never silent, and then my kitchen was never silent, and then my bathroom was never silent. You know, it just got more and more crazy. Like we were saging, smudging, cleansing, holy watering, like at least 3 times a day, intensely praying and stuff, trying to get more light to come in and to spread like that. And it just kept coming anyway. You know, the effect maybe of cleansing and stuff maybe worked for like a couple of hours, and then it just all started back up again. It was so insane. And shadows all of a sudden being like under a shelf or under a bunk bed, like it was almost trying to hide like at the top of some huge closets that we have. There's some free space from the closet until the ceiling, and all of a sudden it literally sounds like a person crawling around up there. Like, what? Now what? So we have this because it's a little it would take standing on something, a ladder or chair, to get up to that free space. So we also have like this blessed salt. That's my term for it. And so we just, go grab the salt, go grab the blessed salt, and we're just in and just started to chant prayers and like throwing salt up there in the free space, not worrying about salt getting everywhere and maybe we should vacuum clean after or whatever, just get this thing out, So we never had any personal direct attacks on our bodies, but I did have, and she did as well, actually, now that I'm remembering, we did have issues with showering. When we went into the bathroom for showering, we had all kind of weird stuff happening. A shadow crawling, like, or just sitting up in one corner of the bathroom, like viciously just looking at you, like, maybe I can't touch you, but I can see you, like this intimidating feeling, really. And I was very much in prayer while I was in shower, just trying to keep repeating prayers all the time while I was in there. And anyway, even in spite of those prayers, ending up with me drying off after the shower, finding bite marks on my arm and scratches on my leg. And I didn't feel as they were happening, but when I dried off, I'm like, well, I do have some allergies, I can see here sometimes I scratch myself when I sleep and stuff, but I can see the difference. And this was when I went into the shower, I didn't have these marks. And when I got out, all of a sudden there they were, while we're at it, when people have scratches and marks like that, some of the best thing you can do is like take holy water or holy oil and literally smear it onto the bite or the scratch, bruise, whatever, and do it several times. Then it heals quicker. And it also functions like a slight protection of that entity trying to do the same thing again. Yeah. So I think maybe we should fast forward to 2020. In the year 2020, it got so intense that both my daughter and I, we were really exhausted. We were actually going on exhausted, and we were like, what are we going to do? Because however hard we try to protect and cleanse and everything, we just can't keep this stuff out. It just keeps getting back in. However, it was really like we were being overrun. And every time we looked out of the window, out on the streets and stuff, we could literally see just these black shadow people just whooshing by. It was insane. I'm getting all chills just by telling you this, because it was, if we didn't know better, we would literally think that we were completely crazy, because they were everywhere. And And I tried to call more and more for angels, of course, and it was almost like I felt like even the angels actually had a hard time coming in because it was that dense. It was ludicrous. So we were going on exhausted. We had almost, at the end of it, we almost had nightmares every single night where we were being attacked in our dream state as well. We had appetite issues, indigestion issues. We could hardly eat, and when we ate, it didn't feel right, and we were losing weight and stuff. Like it was insane, really.
Yeah.
Luckily, and I didn't know this at that time, but you see, and now I can't even remember the date. I think it was 2nd of November, right? 2020, the American election. It grew more and more intense up until the election. Then, as the election happened, my daughter and I was going to bed because America, the different time zones. So to us, the American election was happening like in the beginning of the night as we were going to bed and to sleep. So when we woke up the next morning, I could physically feel the difference. Like something inside of me was just going like, finally. And I've never felt such an ease before like I did. I was all ready for just like going back again, just on the couch and just laying there and just like, oh, what a relief. But I didn't know at that time exactly what had happened. I could just feel that, and it was my body, it was everything reacting like with a huge relief. So when I have kind of like rejuvenated a bit and relaxed some of, and I was past like the worst kind of exhaustion within a day or two, I guess. Then of course I started to question. I'm like, why did it stop from more or less one day to another when it was that insane, right? And as I was kind of like pondering those questions in my mind, an alien being connected to me, like in my mind, I would probably say telepathically somehow. And the visual I got of it, I would probably say it was an Andromedan. That was how it appeared to me. And it related to me that what had happened was the American election gave the Andromedans the opportunity to step into the Earth atmosphere and all of its energies and stop both the degenerative negative gray aliens that was also roaming everything in those years, because with those negative grays came an opening, like they were the opening, because they themselves were possessed by the shadow people from their dimension, wherever that is. And so when they came into Earth energies, they took with them their position and their connection with the shadow people. And that's how they could swarm the earth like that, with that intensity. And the Greys had done so by some kind of time manipulation. I can just see a darkened, a grayish darkened kind of tunnel into Earth energies. And for some reason, I just know that that is related to time. It's some kind of time tunnel, however you want to term that. And that was exactly what the Andromedan was telling me, that they have found a way to bend and manipulate time, the Greys, so that they could come here in that manner. But for some reason, politically and the collective conscious with the American election, that gave the Andromedans indirectly, you could say, the permission to kick out the Greys, and with them all of the shadow people that was connected to them, not the ones that had connected to humans. That's a different story, but the ones that are connected with the Greys. And so the Andromedan told me that they literally rounded all of them up, the Greys and the Black Shadow people, and kicked them back into the time tunnel, whatever you want to call it, and then closed the portal off and made an energy shield of some kind, that it would be impossible for them to try and return, so they cannot come back. And when the Andromedan told me that and showed me those images, I could just feel that it just made sense to me somehow, because that swarming of shadow people, that intensity, that was just unnatural. That to me, that was just unheard of. That's unprecedented. And it was that big of a difference from one day and to the other day. So I you could say bought that story as being the real deal, what the Andromedan related to me. And so after that, it's very rare that we see shadow people now. Usually when we do is because they have found a way to connect to a person or a spirit that is still stuck in some place, a human spirit that is still stuck, like a haunting or something like that. And they can use that as a connection, like as an access point to come in anyway, but they cannot come like in swarms as they did before. And some of the shadow people actually related to me before the election 2020, that they were building hives. That was how they termed it. We're building hives, we're spreading. That was what it said. Again with the chills. Ooh, I'm just so glad that the Andromedans had the opportunity to kick them out and make it stop, because we as light workers, we are like frontline workers. We're like the front line, like in a war, like frontline soldiers. So we get hit first, but everyone else would be next, you know? So when it becomes that tough on us, you can imagine what it would have done to regular people like all over the earth. It would have been insane, like one possession after another, you know? Yeah, so I'm just glad that they had the opportunity to stop it. Yeah.
When we get back, then we're going to start with the, you talked about the interdimensional. Yeah, dark dimensional encounters.
Yeah, of course, the shadow people being one of them, but there are others. And of course, I don't know everything, but I can relate what I have seen and experienced so far. There might be other stuff than that, but yeah, it's a start point. So
Okay. We'll go ahead and take the 2-minute break and we'll come right back.
the dark dimensions, yeah, because when we're talking about interdimensional stuff, it gets a little mixed up because, you know, that's kind of like in the word interdimensional. It's like it looks almost like you could imagine like a lift that can take you up and down from many storages.
Mhm.
And it's kind of a funneling energy of sorts, and the dimensions are going like in layers, kind of like that is what it looks like the inside of a birthday cake, like kind of like has layers like that. But it's more round, like perhaps an onion is probably a better picture, layers in an onion. And the interdimensional beings, they have they need to develop like a special kind of ability in order to be able to go by these interdimensional lifts, kind of thing, in the lack of a better term, in order to shift in and out between dimensions, because all dimensions has like, you could perhaps say, sort of a membrane to it. So if you haven't developed the ability to cross through those membranes, then you can't do it. But there has been, I don't know if they are natural or if they are made. I think there are both kinds. Some interdimensional funnels are made on purpose, and some might be natural. I'm not exactly sure that yet, but those funnels make it a bit easier to shift in and out in dimensional levels. And that's sometimes how people end up with strange pictures and short recordings of something like in the atmosphere. It looks like it's there, and then it's not there, and then it's back again, and it seems almost like it's jumping back and forth. That is some kind of being or beings trying to make the interdimensional shifts. That's actually what they're seeing. They just don't know what it is, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so dark dimensions. Okay. So if you imagine like the whole of cosmos being like a huge onion, perhaps we could say that. And the farther you are out in the onion, the lighter and less dense it becomes. So where we are at is more or less straight in the core, because as you move from zero density and all pure light, and you go in by the dimensional layers, then at the innermost becomes first the physical matter that we are in currently, or we are experiencing anyway. And inside of that, if you go like 1 or 2 layers even longer in, like into the first dimension, and then inwards after the first dimension, is what I see as a huge big black nothingness that I would most likely call some kind of a super black hole or something, where if physical matter is like done for and needs to kind of be like recycled, perhaps you could say, it when the light has left that physical matter, is kind of like it's drawn into this super big black thing in the middle, and it's like being like completely ripped apart simply. And that way it can seep out through the dimensions again in order to be a dark matter, like not in a negative way, but just dark matter, like wet clay kind of thing, that then can be used again by a light being to create a physical form. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is the natural way of it, but oh, woozy. Okay, something is contacting me right now. Okay. Well, I should just keep on telling, it seems. Okay. Just have this tinkling and woozy kind of stuff. So but all like light beings, you could say soul, spirit, mind, collective is like one being, and then we are many beings like that, many light beings. We can also create minor quantum field bubbles within the dimensional levels. So you see, that's how there can be added to what is already there, because we are in a way creating that ourselves, whether we know it or not. Okay. But there are some places, and I am not sure where in the onion they're placed, because it's like they're in between places. So they're there, but they're not really there in a sense. And it's a bit tricky to explain, but what is in them is complete absence of light. I have this contact going on at the same time, so I have to slow down a bit. Okay. So what happens in the what I call dark dimensions is the further you go into these dark dimensions, the less light particles there is. And since the light particles is high vibration energy, that also creates heat. So at the same time that the light is becoming less and less, so the what we call temperature drops, and it becomes colder and colder until the energy that is there, or rather absence of energy, is almost feels like it's not a total standstill, but very close to. Mm-hmm. And it's freezing cold. And that's one of the reasons why people say when they're encountering demons or whatever kind, they have that almost sub-zero, super cold temperature to them. Wow. Okay, so just tell me what it is you want me to focus on. Okay. Okay, so yeah, but yeah. Okay, so when within these dark dimensions, oh man, you see, there's a thing like we could call it intelligence, a mind intelligence, but not together with spirit or anything else, just raw intelligence, like in a focus. It cannot necessarily exist for long, but it can exist for some time. Yes, okay. So those intelligence, raw intelligence, that for some reason refuses to choose a path of light and of the positive, they can only exist within this dark dimension. because they are refusing the light, and the light is everywhere else. So they can only be in these dark dimensions. I usually refer to it, there's a bigger place that looks bigger than just an in-between place. I usually refer to that as the abyss or the void. The abyss in an ocean is also completely blackness, right? So breathe. And so within them, within the abyss, all of those that refuses the light, they're roaming in there. And in order to get out and influence the light worlds, they have to, because they don't really have any energy per se in themselves, because they are in absence of energy, you could perhaps say, you know. So they need to somehow collect energy. And one of the ways they can do that is that they can try and find an access point and try to connect with some living light being of whatever kind. And usually it's by the mind, the subconscious, or a specific point in our mind that we have. Like people usually end up thinking that they're schizophrenic or something, but often it's a specific point in the mind that just, I don't know what term to use. They're being connected there or through the subconscious, like in nightmares and stuff, night terrors. And they can start influencing that light being. And the response from the light being is usually like fear, stress, sorrow, sadness, what we would call negative or heavy emotions. And heavy emotions have a lower vibration of energy. And this raw intelligence can then kind of like suck that. They can suck that through the connection and gather it to themselves, and kind of like make their own small like quantum field out of these heavy energies. And when they have enough of that, then they can try to, either if they know how to cross through the membranes into other dimensions, whether they want to come to a physical world or wherever they want to go, either need to know how to do that, or again, they need to abuse a light being in order to cross into the light being's dimensional level, or the level closest to. And that's how they can try and get into our world. I have come across what you could call perhaps demons that are stuck in like this raw intelligence. They're still stuck in the abyss. But you can sometimes like hear them trying to communicate, almost like they're sending stuff out to people in hopes that they will get a connection somewhere, that then they can start influencing and sucking this energy to them. And sometimes I can hear them, and I can almost like sense the desperation, like the need in them to, because some of them, they don't know how to cross the membranes yet. So they feel like almost like they have this kind of a desperate need to them to connect with someone who, and sometimes this happens through Ouija boards actually, to get that person to open up just enough to them so that they can use that connection to go through, because they don't know how to cross the membranes. And if they can get enough through to that light being, and stick with that person, then they can start to like scout the area that this person is moving in and see if there is more that has some kind of a way of access point for them. And most of us do, because we have experienced losses or a trauma or shock perhaps, or something that we haven't entirely healed or forgiven. So many of us are carrying sort of like smaller access points with us without being aware of it. And the more that these dark beings, demons, they can get to, the stronger the demon can build its energies, until it can completely go through into our dimensional level and start to roam free on its own. So there's different ways of crossing for them, but if they are in these dark dimensions, in the abyss, it takes some work for them in order to cross through to here. Some of these, there are other dark dimensions that are more, seems to be created like by humans, people's own negative karma, like heavy emotions, heavy energies. And they are really, really heavy vibrational places. And last time I came across a place like that is perhaps 5-7 years ago. I was just moving my point of perception around, like my inner vision, and just like exploring and stuff. And all of a sudden I felt this very heavy and dark, kind of like big bubble, or almost, of a place. And of course I got curious. I'm like, well, what now? What's that? And but I felt the negative and the heaviness in it. So I'm like asking my guardian me. And so I moved up to it. And for some reason, it was like they couldn't see me, but I could see in. And what I saw in there was literally people of different kinds, like human spirits. Ooh, stop with the woozy stuff. They was just like trotting around in these places, in all of this desperation and aggression and all the negative emotions, more or less, you can think about. And many of these were serial killers or killers, abusers of different kinds. And yeah, there are even some of the serial killers, and now I'm not good with names, and I'm having this connection going on, so I can't think of any particular names right now. But some of the serial killers that have actually got caught recently in our history, if their physical body has died, they're stuck in there. Their spirit is stuck in there. So that's a grim place. I don't see any entities or any torturing them. It's what I see is that you could say they're actually torturing themselves by going over and over and over again about how evil and negative they are, and how much hurt they have done to others and stuff like that. Looking more into it, you can even see how when they're going through all of that which they have done, you can even see like the piles of blood, and you can see hurt people screaming and trying to get away from them, and yeah, it's bad stuff. I can just say if people end up there by accident in dreams or whatever, you know, just call the angels and get the heck out of there. Because one does not want to connect with that kind of stuff. Yeah, so if when after a serial killer, for instance, like the physical body dies, if they can't or they won't forgive others and forgive themselves, that's one of the places they can end up. Yeah.
What dark dimensional beings have you encountered, like for around you or to your house or anything like that?
Well, I have had many different kinds over the years, everything from serial killer human ghosts to ghosts with possessions, to different kind of people, to some dark dimensional entities that I don't even know exactly how to explain. I can just tell what I see. One day I was laying on the couch on my living room, and I think I was just reading or whatever, really. And all of a sudden I felt like I had this stabbing pain, like randomly just over my body, like stab, 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 stab. And I was like, what? And it didn't particularly like hurt a lot, but it was more like, you know, who's stabbing me? You know, what's going on now? And I just had this vision of a black shadow of some kind, but it was like moving in and out and up and down and back and forth. And I'm like, what's going on? Just looking up at the ceiling and trying to get a trace of that thing. And when I finally got to it, I just saw a very, very long, thin, completely dark shape. It almost kind of like a stick or something, like a long kind of stick or a pole perhaps, but then still it had like some kind of arm and legs and head kind of shaped to it, but not really, not like the round kind of, I wouldn't say humanoid because it was just weakly like arms and head. And I was just looking at that thing and it was icy cold and I had never seen anything like that. So I was literally just staring at it like, what are you? And it just said, we are the stick people. And then it stabbed me sometimes again, and then poof, it was just gone. And I've never seen that before or since. So, but that was what it was calling itself. We are the stick people. But
That's interesting.
yeah, and I didn't have any kind of like physical marks or anything, but the points of where it stabs me felt cold from some time after, like a couple of hours perhaps or something like that. But then again, I didn't feel like I was being threatened or attacked. I more kind of felt like it wanted me to know that they were there or something like that. But what I got from it was, for some reason, some people, they are actually attacking in that kind of way, like stabbing them with pain for some reason and then leaving again. I just I don't really know what's the point of that. But yeah, that's probably the most weird encounter of that kind of stuff I had. So Another entity is like one of my kids, the middlest one that is 15 by now. I think about a couple of years ago, he got a little kind of scared, I think I could say, because he watched that movie, The Slender Man, and for he has abilities too, and something in him is like he wasn't the normal kind of scared, like just, ooh, I watched a scary movie, ooh, like that. He was more like that actually scared him to another not natural level. So I'm like, I could sense that in him as he told me about this, and he's like, Mom, what is up with that movie and stuff like that, and I could sense that he was really worried. So I started to look into the subject, and I watched the movie myself, and I kind of started to research it, whatever I could find about the Slender Man. Now, and I ended up with some real true stories that was even recorded as the people was telling it, and they were just children. And as I was watching some of the stuff, I could connect with that person. That sometimes happens, that I'm just moving my point of perception, as I call it. I'm like whoosh, moving it through the screen, and I'm just like with that person in those moments that they experienced whatever they experienced. And so I was with these girls, and I was starting to feel and see what they were experiencing, and I could do this track and tracing, as I call it. I could like follow the energy source of what was influencing them, and yeah, that entity is for real. The entity being called Sunderman, that's for real. And yes, he more or less looks like he is being described with this very tall, and sometimes it seems like he has many arms, or arms like branches, or whatever kind of weird kind of stuff going on. And then all of a sudden he's back to having 2 arms and 2 legs again, and this whole no face thing. And that is absolutely some kind of a dark dimension entity. And unfortunately, some of the people that are being influenced and by this entity, there's a tendency, if they try to get help, they are being labeled as schizophrenic, often paranoia schizophrenic. And it's just shame, because that entity is actually real, and they're getting zero help. They're just getting a brand and perhaps some medicine, and go figure it out from there. And so we can't kind of like kill those entities off, because well, you could per se kill them in a way for some time, but the intelligence has a possibility of kind of recollecting itself and start up again after some time. So it wouldn't be like a permanent kill off. It will just be gone for some time. But it really takes getting the track and tracing in order, and corner the entity up, and literally dissolving it by a huge amount of high vibrational light, in order to kind of like dissolve the energies that they have, leaving the intelligence kind of temporarily scattered, and it has to go into this abyss or chaos like place, in order to kind of like try and recollect all of its shattered intelligent pieces, and put it back together again. and then start up and try and move or get from there. But they can be if you're having usual like regular encounters with the entities, the more it happens, the more likely it is that kind of what you could perhaps call a form of exorcism is needed in order to get it out of the mind in such a way that the person can be cleansed and hopefully that access point be closed down, so that the entity cannot reconnect with that mind. Yeah, so that's just, and now my notebook is in the other room in my living room, but I have started up a notebook on different demonic types, because I have found that there are different types of them. And according to how much energy they have been successful in sucking and gathering to themselves, it's a little different what they can do interdimensional wise and to light beings. So I'm trying to see if I can kind of like categorize them and get a hold of it in some kind of a way like that. But also I have noticed that when some people are saying, oh, I'm having demon encounters, and I can connect with them somehow through pictures or recording or whatever, and I can like go use that as an access point to go to that person and be with them in those moments that they're experiencing this. Some of what they are terming to be demons are actually negative aliens. They are just presenting themselves in a distorted kind of way to kind of not give away who and what they actually are. So that when it becomes a bit tricky, because you both have like the dark dimension abyss kind of entities, and then you have the negative aliens that are actually beings in some way or form. Somewhere they have what you could say kind of a body, but they are keeping that in another dimension, perhaps even in another time flow, and then they are finding those access points again to get to people in other dimensions, or perhaps even in the same dimensional level. That depends of how close, how many layers of onions they need to pass through, if that makes sense. And some of them are using those interdimensional like funnels, like lift kind of things, in order to get to our dimensional level. So some of them are actually negative aliens, you know, and
Okay. Well, if you're ready to go ahead and then switch to your Hatman experiences and encounters.
so I remember from childhood seeing this dark, very well-dressed male kind of figure, but it didn't really do anything to me, and it didn't like contact me or anything. So in those years, I was just kind of looking and like what's that, you know, and kind of didn't really think anymore about that. Until recently, some maybe 3 years ago, 4 perhaps, I was doing some research just in general And I noticed that I came across story upon story about this completely black dense shadow that seems to have an appearance like a male person, but well dressed and always like with a hat, and a particular kind of old style hat. Some refer to it as a top hat, sort of like that. And I started to wonder, that's kind of weird. I mean, a dark entity with well dressed and like with a hat. I mean, what's up with that? And the more I was looking into it, the more I kind of got that feel that entity, that because of the hat, people have started to term him the Hatman. That's how he got his name, because he's always with a hat, and usually none of the other dark dimensional entities is not wearing a hat. So he got that term, the Hatman. And I kind of got the feel that there was something there, and there was something to it. And then I just started to kind of like, I decided that I would try to do some track and tracing and see if I could find this, because I wanted to know more, because it seems like it's really hurting people, like for real, like even physical damages. Some has reported even toddlers being tried killed by this entity, and the parents just getting to the child like in the last seconds. So that's grim, right? So I tried to track and trace it. And I ended up with feeling this almost kind of personality, but not in a way with beings, because it only consists of negative emotions and negative thought processes. But enough so it has gathered enough so that it has almost like formed an identity of sorts. So I tried to follow that and get closer to it. But as I did, I felt kind of like if you're passing someone on the street and you're getting perhaps by accident a little too close to that person. So they're kind of like not necessarily on purpose, but kind of like pushing you a bit with their shoulder, their arm, kind of like brushing you off like that. And that's how I felt in the beginning, like he was constantly like trying to like brush me off like that. And of course that made me even more curious, because I'm like, why is it doing that? What is it that I'm not supposed to know here? I actually needed to do a lot of track and tracing over several months, because I kept getting that brushing every time. But then it happened ever so often that I was just looking out my windows. We have some trees and I can see a fair amount of the sky, so I like to just look out of the windows sometimes. And then all of a sudden, one evening after sundown, I'm just sitting there and just looking out the window, just as usual. Everything is like it usually is. And then all of a sudden, I hear kind of this like slight grinning, like like that kind of like subtle grinning. And I'm like, what? I still couldn't see anything. And then there was a big tree, and then right in front of that tree, there was kind of an older model of a street lamp, and up against the poster I just see this well-dressed entity with the hat and all that, the Hatman, I'm guessing, you know, leaning up like that, and he's just looking at me with a big smirk and like and he's just looking at me like, yeah, I know you're there, you know. And I instantly, oh, I'm already getting that now. I just felt like that rush of really cold chill, like from the top of my spine and just going like all the way down my spine and out of my body. I'm like, okay, so that's him. Like I had no doubt. And he was just seemed like he was looking straight at me, you know. And he had no issues with standing straight in the street light. Now, usually the dark entities don't do that. They try to stick to the natural shadows, right? So that was kind of weird. And he wasn't like kind of saying much. He was just standing there for some second and just with that smirk and that tiny grin. And like almost like he wanted to let me know that he was real. And I could just sense, like, not in the demon kind of way, it was a little different from the demon kind of feel. It wasn't that aggressive. I felt like it was, you could say, a controlled evil, perhaps controlled aggression. Like he was not the kind of entity that was just fly off in a red flag aggression, violent, whatever. Like he was literally like strategy, like thinking out who and how he wanted to hurt and in what kind of way. Almost like a serial killer, you know, planning out his or her victims and stuff like that. That was the feel that I got off of him. And within a few seconds, he's just vanished like some kind of a thin kind of smoke, kind of like poof, and he was just gone. And I was just sitting there like, well, at least now I know that he's real, you know, that's a real deal. And then I have tried from time to time doing some more track and traces and see if I could like read more information out of him. But he's a very controlled entity, so he's actually hard to read. And I could feel like he was trying to like block me out, like, yeah, I know you're there, like bag off, you're not getting to see anything. Yeah. So it has been like a tiptoeing dance, like back and forth like that, me trying to read him and him kind of like keeping me out. And then a couple of months in between, I have just kind of heard that specific kind of grinning, like somewhere in the distance, but not per se seeing him as such. Until a couple of weeks ago, I started to work as a caretaker for this mentally retarded 16-year-old girl. She is in an institution, but she has like kind of her own small building besides the main building. And she needs someone to be there constantly because otherwise she's going to hurt herself and perhaps start a fire or stuff like that, you know. So she needs someone to be taking care of her and keeping an eye on her like 24/7. And when I started to work there a couple of weeks ago, I started to notice that sometimes, specifically when she's sleeping, she is speaking in tongues like languages not officially known to man. And I have heard that kind of speech, hellish speech, whatever you want to call it, before. And I was like, okay, so I think because of the mental retardment, she's unfortunate, she's open to that. She's open to dark entities trying to go through her. And it's when I first you notice and you recognize that is not a normal human thing to be doing. And then you really start to listen to it. You can almost feel this kind of funnel of negative energy just going through her up here, and just going through her like that, and she's just speaking in tongues and screaming and shouting and banging on closets and running around in circles and stuff like that, and sometimes even attacking people. I even got bruised up here a couple of nights ago because I'm pretty good with parrying and blocking and stuff, but a couple of times she got to me physically, and you can feel and see it's that kind of, it's personal. It's a personal attack. Like, I want to hurt you, like that. So it's a tricky kind of situation, but since I'm not new to all of the negative stuff, it doesn't really bother me, but I am observing a lot about what's going on around her. And so the last 7 days, the last week here, I had only night shifts with her. And as a night guard, you're being there alone. So I had the first couple of nights, I did have to have these physical fights with her because the possession was coming down when she had slept for just about an hour. It usually starts between 2:30, 3:30 a.m. That's when it really begins to get tough. And she has that stream, that I would say some kind of possession. And she just gets out of bed and starts running around and speaking in tongues, circles, just screaming. And when she sees the night guard, and then now I was the new girl on the block, so she was just coming straight for me. And it took 2 or 3 nights in order to me kind of showing her in the physical that you cannot get to me, whatever you're coming at me with, that I stop it. It's here. It stops here. And when she started to realize that I have that light and that strength with me, now the nights after that, she started to back off. So when I take a couple of steps towards her, she's backing steps up, sort of like that. So that's a very special kind of situation. And along with those nights, because I was aware that something was very wrong with this, sometimes I step right outside the building. There's a glass window in the door, so I can still see what's going on inside. I was just standing right outside the door, just getting some fresh air and just, a break from being inside. And all of a sudden I sensed this kind of whoosh of energy, almost like a big bird would fly close to a person, almost like that kind of whoosh of some kind. And it went just like straight over me and then over to the lawn, again, in between some of the street lights. And as I get this whoosh, that kind of grinning, that particular grinning sounds again. And I just hear that along with the whooshing. And then I just look out of the lawn, like just looking for any kind of movement, really not expecting something particular, but just looking for any kind of movement. And all of a sudden I see this between the street lights, kind of this gathering of some darkness of some kind. And it becomes, as it becomes more dense, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a Hatman again. It's the same well-dressed entity with a top hat, and he's just looking at me and grinning and like, but this time he wasn't just standing there looking at me. He was actually kind of agitated, I could feel. And I was like, well, what's up with that? Because usually we have this, okay, you're over there, I'm here. Okay, no biggie, right? But this time he started to walk towards me across the lawn with an agitated feel to it. And I'm kind of like, what? And instantly I start to like put up some of my shields of light. And I'm like, you can walk up to me to a certain point and that's it, dude, you know, no further. And he just walked up, but then he started to slow down, and he was like, I could just feel it, and he was just looking straight at me like, I want to pass you and go in there. Like he wanted to go into the building, into the house. And I'm like, well, I'm standing here. This is my shield. That's a no-go. And he was just agitated, and he walked a couple of steps back and forth, like he really wanted to figure out some kind of way of passing me. So I stepped it up a bit, and then I said to him, well, if you know me, you know very well what I can do, and I will roast those negative energies off of you. You can have no doubt about that. So, you know, you're staying off or we're on, you know, kind of that I was putting out to him. And he just got more and more agitated, but still he was keeping to that kind of little space where he was walking around on the lawn, kind of ish. And then then at the end of it, he was like, fine, I can just go find someone else, he said. And then he just started to pass me across the lawn, and he walked into the main building that also houses a different kind of mentally retarded kids. Yeah, neat. And he just walked into that house, and then I could just start vaguely hear some of the children starting to wake up in the middle of the night. One of it was a boy. He's about 10 or 11. I could hear him screaming as he woke up, and that was timed with me seeing the Hatman going into that building. And I think the Hatman this time was actually enjoying himself, because this time he was actually relating to me that he enjoys hurting people this way. And he's going particularly for people that has these kind of like open kind of damages of sorts, like mental retardment or emotional heavy issues, or physical damages. And younger kids that is not necessarily anything wrong with them, but they have open abilities that the parents are not aware of. I'm being contacted again. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Some of these children, like small children, the parents are not aware enough. They don't know that the child's constellation and of abilities and stuff. And so that leaves them with too little protection from the parents. And if the child doesn't instantly know how to call in angels per se and stuff like that, because it's not developed enough evolutionary in evolutionary levels, then the Hatman can actually get to them past the parents and gets them. And you can't say like dark dimensional beings they cannot love, but they get such a pleasure of an evil, sinister kind of pleasure out of literally torturing these people. And it's very planned. They go exactly for specific people, and not just once. If they have first found some of these people, they keep coming regularly. And the Hatman is one of those entities doing it. And he's very dominating. Sometimes he sometimes he's telling he's telling the shadow people where to go and who to hurt. Like some of the shadow people that are still here, that can still come in, he used some kind of like goons, or yeah, goons, like guns for hire, sort of speak, or whatever term, you know. So the Hatman has some kind of level to him, like he's like he's running the show in some term of that. And currently I'm not really sure what to do about it. I just when I try and follow these tracks, I can also feel and hear some of the people that he's hurting. You know, and it's hard because the caretakers of these people, or parents, or whoever loved one is there, you know, they don't know about this, so they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to protect them, you know, and stop it. Yeah.
Would you be willing to go ahead and move on to Jim? And I think
Yeah.
after that, we'll stop when this episode, and we'll go into your alien encounter and subjects for the next episode.
Yeah.
That way I can fit in my questions before we end the episode.
Yeah. So Jen, you were saying.
Yeah.
So I have had encounters that I would say is most likely Jen, but they were before I started to do a little research on what is known in the ancient texts and stuff like that about Jen. So at that time, I wasn't influenced about what has been written in known story. What I sense is that I would rather like to refer to them as elementals, because that's what I see. I haven't had like a huge amount of encounters. It seems like it happens sporadically. Like I'm just being somewhere at the right place at the right time, kind of like. And then I start seeing like fog, for instance, kind of gathering, and it becomes almost kind of a fluid, floating kind of gathering of water, kind of like lifted somewhere off the ground like that. And it's not taking a particular shape, but but still it looks like a shape about the size of a human. Mostly they're bigger, and that kind of just flowing of water like that, like a huge blob of water is just flowing and floating in the air. It's a weird thing to see, actually. I'm just looking at like, okay, so now what? And that time was somewhat close to the creek that started to form. And I just heard this we are water spirit, almost like kind of a singing voice to it. And I was really just looking at it and just like, okay, well, what does that mean then? And there wasn't really any kind of particular answer that I could pick up per se. But I got the feel that somehow it was being around in that area, and it wasn't human. It didn't have any kind of like being to it. It literally felt like it was off the earth, like off the planet somehow, like when the planet was forming and coming into a form and a more like particular kind of like physical being. Usually I call it when the planet was born, kind of say it gave birth to itself, you could say, kind of when it formed in the physical.
That's so crazy you said that, because I wrote down, if the Jinn is like a water form, I said, well, I wrote down water before the planet was made.
Yeah.
Because there was light, and then, the planet started off as water or so. And yeah, they were here before humans and stuff. So I just thought like that instantly when you were talking. So it's crazy that you said that.
They are in some way out of that, almost like when the planet was born, they were being born from that as well. That is what I see. And so sometimes I refer to them as firstborn because of that. And so they are in every element, like water, air, earth, stone, fire, whatever. They for each elemental there is this elemental spirit of kinds, intelligent spirit of some sort. And they are kind of like a collective, but they can work and move about individually for some time if they want to, and then reconnect with their collective. And because it seems like if you go by the water in China, for instance, what you would meet there is perhaps in a nuance in its own way, but it still feels very much like the same, that as in another country, you would meet the same kind of elemental being. And at that first time with this water one, I didn't really get a lot of communication, because for some reason a strong connection just wasn't there for some reason. But it was just showing me more like in pictures that it was everywhere, kind of in everything. Whatever holds water also holds a part of it in some way. And in such a way they are kind of like, they're loyal to the planet, you could say. So it seems like whatever they're doing, however they're working, they are trying to like always be a support to the planet. Like they're concerned with the planet. So like trying to keep the water clean, trying to assist the animals finding water and kind of stuff like that. Like always support the planet, support life. And they're very loyal to that. And I think that is why some people are having issues with them, for instance, littering or removing a particular tree or trying to bend a water stream and stuff like that. And then after that, bad stuff starts to happen to those people. Like different kinds of little freak accidents they experience after that. And what I feel is these elementals or Jinn, or whatever best term to use, they're kind of like, you know, that's not okay, you know, like winging them off like that. So I didn't get a lot of much else from that water one. It seems like for some reason I connect better with the fire ones, and they can show up if there's a natural fire somewhere, like a bonfire or a lit candle and stuff like that. But they can also sometimes just like poof, show up, like all of a sudden you can feel a particular room. For instance, the room that I'm in now, if you go by feng shui, it's turned to the south, and south is usually connected with fire, and that's exactly how I feel. And I do sometimes like have what feels to me just like a greeting from one of these fire elementals, almost like it's just going, hi, I'm here, you know, just passing through or something like that. It doesn't feel personal, but just like, yay. And I can physically feel the temperature in the room going slightly up, even though I haven't changed the heat or anything in here. It's just all of a sudden that the room is just getting warmer, and I have this kind of friendly, like, hi kind of feel somewhere in a short distance, and it just passes on. And sometimes if I have lit candles, it happens that within the flame I can just see for just brief seconds. And I'm asking my oldest daughter, as if like, did you see that too? Because like for a few brief seconds you can almost see, if you can imagine like some kind of face, but like made out of fire. But you can tell there's eyes and some kind of facial features, and it's just kind of like smiling, like, again, it's just going, hi, you know, and then poof, it's just gone and the flame is just normal again. So it has mostly been fun encounters, friendly encounters like that with the fire ones. but a couple of times I have watched some actual video recordings by people going on some kind of explorers or whatever, and they're just, you know, like recording, tick, 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 tick. So usually I can tell if it's the actual recording or if it's just something set up. I can feel the difference. And I saw these guys exploring a place where you could perhaps say a small offspring of some kind of, they called themselves Christians, but I would not refer to them myself as Christians. They're kind of like an offspring of some kind of Christianity. And they had this church congregation, and a lot of stuff happened there, and all of a sudden, all of them just left that building and they couldn't sell it afterwards. So it was just staying there abandoned. And so these two guys just go in there like, oh, we're just recording this abandoned place. And because I can do this, move my point of perception, I can go through, if it's real recordings and stuff, I can go through that. And in spirit and mind, I could kind of like be there and be on the place and feel and see whatever they feel and see, but I'm seeing and feeling a lot more because of this ability stuff, I would say. And there was a couple of fire elementals, and they were not happy. They were not happy. Whatever that congregation had made, let me put it like that, they were not good people. And they were swindling money, they were swindling people, they were abusing people, all kinds of stuff. And the fire elementals being in that area, I can tell you, they were just angry. They were just furious, like this righteous anger because of what the congregation had done, and that the energy, like the consequential energy of what they had done, was like it almost kind of like it was toxic to the area. You can even tell when the guys were filming the perimeters, like outside of the house, like some plants was like withered and died, and some places where there should be grass, it was all like withered and died out. And the fire elementals in that place, of course, the guys recording wasn't aware about that, but that was actually them trying to communicate to the guys that was recording that they were really upset about what happened. So they were like slamming doors, and things were flying across the room and stuff like that. And sometimes they were being pushed because these two guys, they are some kind of Christians themselves, but they seem to me to be like actually like the real kind of Christians, like positive people, very good-hearted people, really. But just the fact that they were in Christianity, just that fact, and they being on those premises, it just pissed those elementals off, the fire elementals. So they even got pushed sometimes in their energies, like they could feel like, oh, I feel like I'm being pushed backwards and stuff like that. And you know, they can be somewhat harsh, the fire elementals, because they don't take no crap from people, you know, and they really don't like when humans are hurting each other and being unfair and hurting the planet and stuff like that. It really makes them angry. And in communicating that, they can go a little tough on people. And it could be a little scary for some, because of course they don't know what is going on, right? So they just see like all of a sudden like a chair flying across the room or something. I'll go like, whoa, what is going on here? And it's just actually the elemental trying to like, this is bad, you know, everything just went wonkers and now I have to deal with this shit and this negative energy and you humans, you're just so stupid, and like just going off on emotions like that. And it was very clear to me, and they did not mind telling me exactly what had happened in that place, those fire elementals, and they were just going on like, and they did this, and you can see now these guys are going to find those papers in a little while. Just watch the papers. And then yes, a couple of seconds after, the guys recording are turning to some kind of left desk that actually had a couple of papers sitting on it. And I'm like, okay, whoa. The elementals was like, there's something in those papers, you know, they were cheating, they were doing bad stuff, and like, you know, that was very special. And as far as I can tell, these elementals or gens, they're all over Earth, and they don't mean to, as far as I can tell, they don't mean to harm people, but sometimes they just get enough, you know, sometimes they just had it. And if people are not willing to kind of wisen up and start to do better, it does happen that you end up with tires exploding out of nowhere, or your furnace is going off, or whatever, you know, and that's kind of them just trying to like wake the fuck up, you know, like because, you know, they just want what is best for all of us, the planet, them, us, all of us. And so, you know, it happens that they lose patience with people. It does. Yeah. So, and some of them are very much connected to the living, the fauna, you could say. I have at once upon a time, I was just out walking, and I walked past a big tree with like a really thick tree trunk. And no biggie, you know, I was just passing and just looking just like that. And all of a sudden I noticed it seems like that tree kind of had a face, kind of like, well, like, what is that, pareidolia, or now what, you know? But then it slowly started to take shape in some kind of energy, kind of green brown way, and it kind of like partially like stepped out of the tree trunk. And again, I just got that friendly kind of like, yeah, hey, I'm here, you know, I have noticed you, now you notice me. And then it kind of just went back in again, and I'm like touching the tree with my hands, like, that was weird. I got the feel that they can, the element that they are connected to, they can kind of like go in and out of that just by focusing their will on it. Somehow they can just go in and out of that. So you can pass the same tree one day and it's totally normal, and the next day it seems to be alive, and then again it's normal. And I think it's because they're going like in and out of that. So yeah, sometimes when people are saying these stories, you know, I swear to the sweet sacred whatever, I saw a face in that tree. And yeah, well, most likely they actually did. But it's just when you go back there, the elemental might have moved on. Mm-hmm. So then it's not there, you know. Yeah.
All right. Well, Maria, we have came close to the end of you telling your stories for today, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask you a bunch of questions because we still got like 25 minutes, and I want to ask you some of the questions from last video we did as well.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're ready, go ahead and start with the questions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Do you think shadow beings are the cause of why all things are faulty or break for unknown reasons?
Other shadow people or dark dimensional entities, yes. If not those, I think that some negative aliens is capable of doing it as well. But I haven't particularly seen any for myself. It's just the feel I kind of get off of it. But yeah, a lot of the times when things just break down or stop working for apparently no good reason, yeah, something dark was passing through, or perhaps trying to relate a message of some kind. Yeah.
What's the scariest looking shadow being you've ever seen?
I don't think the shadow people per se are that scary looking, but the feel of them is very aggressive and very violent. And they like to personally bully and target people. So you have that kind of feel like literally someone going for you, like on purpose, like you're just gonna get it. And that of course is very intimidating. So, but they don't look particularly ugly. I think going by ugliness or kind of horror, I think that vampire, evil reptilian or whatever kind of being, that was freaking horrible. There are some demons that I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or if it's just their distorted energies. They look kind of a mix between a human and an animal, kind of distorted monster kind of look to it, and in body usually as well, like being half beast, half man kind of stuff going on. And of course, if you're not prepared for that, you know, that can be pretty scary as well, because that's with the weird eyes and sometimes teeth and drool and all kinds of yucky stuff as well. So yeah, that's, I think it depends on what you think of it as horrible. You know, is it blood dripping or is it huge teeth or, you know, whatever. So yeah.
What color eyes have you seen on shadow people, if any?
Usually they don't have a color. If they have a color, I've seen what I would call orange and red, but not an intense red, but like a slight red, I would rather call it. When I have seen intense red, usually what I track and trace to is a negative alien, actually. But the orange and the red seems to be rare. When they were kind of like swarming the earth, I think at least 97% of all of those I saw, they were just black. They were no color. It was just all black. And you could only very vaguely make out some kind of facial features because it was just that black.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever tried remote viewing?
Actually, I'm kind of pondering about that term, because I think that I'm actually doing it by nature and not knowing what it is that I'm doing. Because what I can tell you is that now I'll tell you what I can do, because I haven't actually looked up the term yet because I was kind of like still pondering about it. But what I'm capable of doing is, say I'm in Denmark So let's say you have a house in China,
Mhm.
wherever, you know, the other side of the globe, and you're thinking that something funky might be going on there. So you're kind of like asking me, could you go there and like check it out? And so you are perhaps relating 2 or 3 pictures to me of that house, or even just going by Google Earth view to get like a real-time a map kind of a picture of that place, the coordinates. Then I can do what I call move my point of perception into that place or building, and then move about. If there's no entities or people or something blocking me on purpose, then I can just roam around there however much I like, and look at it and say, oh yeah, you have red socks in your bottom drawer, or that piece of paper you're looking for, you accidentally put it in the kitchen cupboard, or whatever, you know. I can just sort of roam around free, and usually I can see 80–90% of what is there. But I don't know for sure if that is what is understood by the known term remote viewing. I'm not exactly sure if it's the same thing, but that is what I can do. And I do it by nature. For some reason, it just started one day. It was actually accidental the first time it happened. It was pretty scary because I was watching a paranormal investigation of Pinthurst, and that's just the worst kind of place ever. And I didn't know at that time that I could do this, or it just got really, I became really aware of it on that day, because I have done it before that day, but I don't think I was really aware. But that day I became aware, because all of a sudden I was just looking, like right here we sit now, and watching that video, the recording of the place, and all of a sudden I feel like kind of like a suction going into the screen, like like that. And the next thing I know, I'm standing besides the guy that was recording the place, in the place, like in the room, in the freaking place. And that was really scary, because it felt so physical. Like I could feel that I was there. There was 1 or 2 feet to my left, there was actually an old table. I could walk up to it and literally feel the table, like I was physically touching it here and now. It was crazy. It was that real, you know. And I felt all of those energies all at once in Penhurst, just swarming me, just coming at me. And it was just so overwhelming in total, like in a whoosh. I just went back through the screen and became aware of myself sitting in the chair, and I actually just pushed off of the table like that, knocking my chair back over, and my headphones just flying out of my ears like that. And I was just standing there like, what the F just happened, you know, just like, whoa. And then I was just like, no, 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 no. And I just ran out into the kitchen, like just trying to get away from it all, and just trying to just have some brief moments to kind of regroup and kind of like, what just happened, you know?
Yeah.
And that day, I think it's just about maybe 1.5 years ago, somewhere along those lines. And that day I became very, very much aware that I can do this. So now I can both do it on incident, but also on purpose.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Are you able to teach anybody how to do that?
have thought about it, and I think the best kind of answer I can give right now is that is something I have been wondering about like the last month, kind of, that I would like to, if I could, to kind of like share this with people.
Mhm.
So, but I have only done one video so far because a lot of stuff is also happening around me. I need to attend to a lot of light worker stuff and job and all that. But I want to do more videos where I think maybe if I explain exactly what happens inside of me as all of this happens, and trying to describe very much in details how what is going on, then maybe it people can kind of like visualize it and perhaps try to copy that themselves.
Mm.
Because I find this stuff somewhat hard to explain, because you can go to a new age store or whatever and buy whatever piece of crappy book, and there can be some decent methods in there, but that might only work to whoever wrote the book, right? because it's their kind of, I'm trying to structure something that actually needs to be felt in spirit.
Mhm.
So how could you ever put that into some kind of structured recipe, right? And some of these methods and books and stuff, years ago, I've tried some of that myself, and I'm like just going like BS, BS, BS. And I think that is why many people are telling, like, oh, I've tried this and that, and I don't understand why I can't get it to work and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's because they're not actually connecting. They're not connecting to it. They're not visualizing it and feeling it inside. And I think that is the way to actually activate whatever it is that you're trying to learn, to accomplish. So I'm hoping that maybe in my videos I can describe it and tell it in a way that people can almost kind of like visualize it and feel it for themselves, and perhaps then try that themselves if they want to. At this moment, I think it's the best way, but yeah, I am pondering about that. Haven't come up with a specific answer besides that until now. So, ideas are welcome. Yeah, that's kind of it for now.
You mentioned that you've been working on a book or like some type of journal of
Mhm,
dark dimensional beings. I would like to
mhm.
check that out sometime, or maybe you can go over it um,
Sure.
in a video or episode or something.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm still working it. So it's not like a complete volume or anything. I'm trying to work it as I go, and I'm trying to go into my memories and see if some of the encounters that I've had earlier, if they are actually some of these types, and I just wasn't aware at that time in the time flow. So I'm both trying to go by what I have experienced before, but also what I'm currently experiencing, and try my best to see, do they have similarities that perhaps you can put them into some kind of subcategory.
Mhm.
Because like I said, what I find when people say demons, that is a very general term. It really has a lot of subcategories to that. And yeah, sure, we can try and go through. I think I have 7 categories so far on my list. And then I have some names that I'm still going through. People should not do this if they don't know what they're doing. But for instance, this entity called Cthulhu, I sense to be a very distorted and pure evil thing. So at some point, I will try and take a little dance with that as well and see if I can get any info out of it and hopefully categorize it. But it's potentially dangerous stuff. So it takes it being kind of a good day, that you have slept well, you're well fed, you're well rested and stuff like that, and then you can go and try and track and trace and meet these things without getting too hurt, preferably, right? So yeah, sure, if you want to. I could have that notebook out for our next meeting.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. Well, I got a couple more questions, but I'm going to ask these from for last episode since we're running a little short on time. When you had your near-death experiences, you were dying. You said that you felt your body was frozen. Did it feel like some type of rigor mortis feeling?
You could perhaps put it like that. Yeah, that's an interesting term because it literally felt like piece by piece by piece, every part of me was stopping, freezing, coming to a complete halt, like zero movement of any kind, energy, fluid, whatever. And it was like in steps, almost kind of if you watched a plant wither in slow motion, then it will kind of wither from the leaf tip and then in like that. And it's a pretty creepy feel, really, because there's just no doubt that you can feel that this is actually death, and it's just like creeping, going through you kind of like that. And it doesn't start in one particular place, it's everywhere at the same time and closing in on you and then ending with the heart. So yeah.
My last question is, what caused all your deaths? Do you know why your body shut down like that?
Can I be 100% sure? No, of course not, because not even doctors can come close to explaining it, really, because the times where it was tested were like, you're fine, skibbly doodle do, you're good. So no, I cannot say for absolutely sure, but if you take over the years how it was done to me and how I had my dark entities and being encounters in between like that, and how my family and I was just picked out like ducks, like one at a time.
Yeah.
I have a period for about 5 or 6 years. I was literally attending to a funeral at least once a year. The entire close family members of mine were just like picked off, but just one by one. And within the last year or two, I started to put together all of the pieces, and to me it looks like there is definitely plans in this. There is definitely some kind of evil agenda going, not just for me, but for people like me, light workers, good-hearted people, priests, priestesses of whatever kind, the ones that are really trying to make a difference for people and spreading the light and stuff like that. If you're looking more into their cases and their encounters and, oh, this freak accident just kind of happened and stuff, then you're starting to notice patterns. And there is definitely something very evil out for us, no doubt. It's, I usually say we're being hunted, definitely. So I would say what happened in my life with the kids and all that kind of stuff, it just made it possible for them to get a straight like attack on my heart like that and just try to put me out. Yeah, that's my evaluation of it. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're alive today, and, and coming on to share your experiences. I do
Yeah.
appreciate you for coming on and telling your second series of stories, which you could. Will you give the closing comments or any advice for people going through any experiences that may be similar to yours?
Yeah, first of all, I would say be a little smarter when you have what seems like random mishaps and illnesses and stuff like that. Be a little more skeptical about that, because usually what I find is that there's no random in that. There is no random in that. We are just not grasping the facts yet that there is no such thing as random. And for people thinking, oh, this topic is very interesting, I want to go sniff around, unless you know really how to protect yourself at all times against whatever, because you cannot know what will take your invitation, you should just not do it. If you do, you should count on getting hurt, and maybe you'll need assistance to get rid of whatever it is. So I understand the curiosity, but what I have told my kids, learn your protections and your cleansings first before you do anything else, because otherwise you're really just a sitting duck, because they have all of that dimensional understanding and we don't. Most of us don't. And what else? Yeah, if people are in doubt that they're having these encounters and it seems to be like intensing, I will say don't wait. Don't wait, get to cleansing and protection, get to someone who can assist you. It can even just be a really good-hearted, nice person that that connecting and being more friends with that person, being more close with that person, you share the light, and that can actually keep some of the negative stuff out. So, just don't wait and just think, oh, I'm just crazy, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens, because by the time that you kind of finally get around to, okay, this is actually for real, you're always in waist deep already, and it will be that harder to get back out. So do something, reach out in time. And children, whatever their parents can grasp it or not, they do need as much protection by the light and the love that we can give them. And I will say children below the age of 5 should not be sleeping in their own room. They should be sleeping with bigger siblings or with parents. And I know that many people no, they need to learn to sleep in their own room. Yeah, okay, but who are you helping by putting them in their own room? I know, do you want to take that risk? Do you want to place that responsibility on the child? Should there be anything? I'm just saying, should there be? If the child is sleeping in the same room with older siblings or parents, naturally they're kind of more like sharing the light and the love, the positive vibrations, which makes it more safe for the child. Because even though the child might not be born specifically with extrasensory abilities, they are always more open to the other dimensions than grown-ups are. And so there is already a natural access point for whoever, whatever might want to hook up, you know. So I would just say whatever kind of child you have, just do it anyway. Just let them sleep in your room. You know, they can have their own bed, but in the same room. Yeah, that would be my advice, I guess. Take that stuff seriously, you know.
Well, Maria, again, I appreciate you for coming on and telling your stories, and thank you, audience, for tuning in. Other than that, it's been another episode of Real Supernatural Encounters, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. We'll see you later. Bye,
Yeah,
Maria.
thank you. Bye.